Hello and welcome to another episode of the PDPreps podcast. It is week 7 here in Sonoma County of the high school football season. I'm Gus Morris, sports reporter with the Press Democrat, your host today. Joining me as always is my colleague and co-host, Keenan O'Doherty. We are here to recap what was a pretty crazy week 6. We did not expect some of these scores. Definitely a wild week of results here from week 6. Take a look at our week 7 rankings. We'll kind of do like the mid-season report here a little bit. NBL play begins this week. We have some good matchups coming up, and then we'll also take a look at the schedule coming up for week 7 and some of our predictions. So, Keenan, what a week it was. I don't even know where to begin. We had several big upsets. We had some crazy finishes. We had some wild wins. Where to begin? I don't like. I think an easy place to start is Petaluma beating Vintage last week, 28-26. Second time Vintage has ever lost in the 5 years since the VVAL has been created. First time Petaluma has beat them in the last 7 tries. The last 6 games have been only one game was decided by 30 points or less. And Petaluma shocks the world, takes down Vintage. Crazy game, Keenan. I don't know what we had some stats and some results and stuff from that one, but just kind of the marquee win of the Rick Christ era since he's been over there at Petaluma.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, we kind of these last couple of weeks, we were kind of looking at it going in, and both the last 2 weeks have kind of been shallower slates, but in terms of games with some key teams off, some key teams on byes. But I mean, this was nonetheless exciting. This week was just absolutely insane. Obviously, Gus, you were at a game of the week, which we'll touch on later on. I was kind of manning the 1s and 2s and just checking on Twitter, and I was just like, my mouth dropped. I can't even count how many times my mouth dropped just looking at the scores. But yeah, Petaluma Vintage. I kind of said this last week. I was like, look, because I picked Petaluma. I was like, look, Petaluma is going to be a tougher task for Vintage than I believe Casa Grande was, just because of the fact that Petaluma likes to play that tough football, grinded out football like Vintage does. And I think Vintage's line was going to have a tougher time with Petaluma than they did with Casa Grande. And obviously not a knock on Casa Grande by any means, but Petaluma style matches up with Vintage very well. And I think they kind of proved my point a little bit on Friday night. Although I will say this, Vintage did jump out to an early 27 lead. So Vintage did look like they were going to be, vintage a little bit. But then, I mean, Petaluma stormed back, took the lead 21-20 at half. And I think the Amanke, who was those special teams, obviously they had a 75-yard kickoff return. And then Silas Paula-Georges did what he did and punched it in. Then they kind of we have some notes here. That was Chase Miller had a 75-yard kickoff return touchdown. That's what that was. And then later touchdown, on it was Silas. Yep, yeah. So give some so Chase Miller some credit on that one. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and then Petaluma took the lead early in the third quarter, 28-20, and then I mean they just kind of held on. But Gus, that finish was quite something, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I mean I was talking with one of their assistant coaches too after the win, and he was like he's like I still don't know what the hell just happened, but yeah, I mean like that was something that stood out to me was the fact that Vintage went up early, and like you were saying, their play style is very run heavy, and so I'm thinking, all right, they take a 2-score lead early on, they're just going to hold the ball, and then just run out the clock, and like Petaluma is won't have a lot of chances to score after they kind of fall into that hole, but. Yeah, that 75-yard kickoff return touchdown for Chase Miller, and then the short touchdown run from Silas actually gave Petaluma the lead, 21-20 at half. They took an early score, Silas again in the third quarter had a 66-yard run, so he broke off a big one. They took a 28-20 lead. Vintage, I think a few turnovers there in the third, fourth quarter from both teams. It was definitely one of these, you kind of mentioned grinded out, gritty games. Neither team, it seemed like, played, their best football. I think even and also too, we have to mention the fact that Petaluma was doing this without their starting quarterback Henry Ellis, who's still nursing a shoulder injury, and then also their top wide receiver and defensive back Dawson Shaw. Both of those guys were out. So the fact I mean, again, that just makes this win over Vintage so much more impressive, that they were able to kind of do that without two of their best players. But it still came down to it. Vintage got a score late, fourth quarter, failed on the 2-point try. And then they even got one last chance kind of in the final seconds, and they just, couldn't convert it into a score. So defensive battle for sure in this one, but you're right, special teams stepped up. I mean, everyone just kind of stepped up. I mean, you kind of have to, in a 2-point win here over, again, the team that's been the premier team in the VVAL, for the last 5 years. I mean, again, and to do this without two of your best players, just uber impressive for Petaluma. And yeah, they're now 5-1. I believe I think that's 2-0 now in the VVAL. So Petaluma is just kind of, watch out all of a sudden. We figured that they'd be much improved this year, but they've been dealing with some injuries. They had, that tough loss to Annalee, that you were at. And yeah, I mean, they still have to play Casa Grande, and they still have to play American Canyon, and it still seems like, Petaluma, Vintage, Casa, and AmCam are kind of going to be those four teams kind of, battling it out, for the VVAL title. But man, I mean, it was an exciting race last year. And I think it's going to turn out to be an even more exciting race this year. So, huge win for Petaluma. But any last thoughts on that before we move on to some other games?
Yeah. I mean, just couple quick notes is the fact that combined, Petaluma and Vintage combined for only 16 pass attempts.
Yeah.
So that doesn't say anything. I mean, Silas Paula-Georges had 121 yards rushing. Ed Burnsitch had 2 touchdowns with 52 yards rushing. Asher Levy.
Actually, quick thing. So I also texted that Petaluma coach as well. Those stats are actually off. Those 2 touchdowns for Silas. Whoever inputted those.
2 touchdowns for Silas. Okay. Well, either way, Silas is an animal.
Yes.
Asher Levy. He seems, although he did throw 2 interceptions, he seems to have stepped in for Henry Ellis really well. Obviously had 1 rushing touchdown. But Gus, you mentioned the exciting year for the VVAL. It's pretty going to be pretty interesting. The fact that Petaluma ends their slate with Casa Grande away and then American Canyon at home the last 2 games of the season. So that should be pretty exciting thing. But I guess another crazy game, because we're going to have a bunch of these this podcast, was Maria Carrillo pulling away over Annalee 31-21. Maria Carrillo's defense was just on fire. Couple of interceptions, they kind of neutralized that air raid attack that Annalee is known for. And they were down 27-23 with just before half in the fourth quarter, and they ended up taking it. But Gus, obviously we were kind of, neither of us were at that game, but we were kind of following the updates, and Marie, this is exactly why we're so high on Maria Carrillo.
Yeah, exactly. Like you kind of mentioned, it was close game, even late, and then Maria Carrillo took the lead, about 7:30 left in the fourth, got a 2-point conversion, which turned out to be huge, because again, it's like, Annalee gets within field goal distance, and that game could either be won or go to OT. And yeah, I mean, Annalee came back down. Nathan Dittman actually got the 3rd interception of the night off of Sammy Long. And I guess kind of reading some stuff about what happened in that game, it seemed like 2 of those were kind of off, like tip balls or off, someone's helmet or something. So that ball, I think I saw highlighted that one too, and it was kind of knocked off of the receiver's helmet, and kind of, and Dittman hauled it in. I think that was with something like 2:30 left in the game, and then Carrillo and their really stout rushing attack just kind of ran the clock out. But yeah, I mean, again, we've talked about it before. Carrillo is kind of one of these teams that you see the 0-3 record, and you see some of their losses, and you're like, maybe kind of write them off, maybe a down year for Carrillo. But last 2 weeks, I mean, beating Annalee like this, obviously beating Santa Rosa last week was a huge, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, was a huge, just getting the win column. That's a big game just for, a team's confidence. And then, I mean, shoot, to beat Annalee, who we've been really high on as well. That's a huge momentum game for them going into MBL Redwood play next week or this week. And they have a big one against Ukiah, who knocked off Casa Grande. And we'll get to that one here in a sec too. But I mean, we've kind of been looking at the Redwood as like St. Vincent's is kind of the clear-cut favorite. And I don't think that really changed this week, but Carrillo is kind of looking like one of these teams that, that November 4th game against, St. Vincent Carrillo could be a huge one as far as it comes down to the league race over there in the Redwood. But yeah, I mean, this Carrillo team, man, what a gritty group. I mean, especially after last year, to have the season that they did, where I think they went something like 1-9 or something. Like they had, and took their lumps. They had some pretty rough losses there, and then to start this year 0-3, and now they're just kind of clicking and hitting their stride at the perfect time. So absolutely huge win for Carrillo as well. So last thoughts on this one, Keenan?
No, you kind of said it like it needed to be. I mean, Marie Carrillo there was, well, I mean, they got a couple running backs and that just pound the ball. They just pound the rock. They're gritty and they know how to do it. But yeah, before we get to Ukiah and Casa, though, we want to touch on Rancho versus Pleasant Valley. Obviously, Pleasant Valley, I believe, is a northern section powerhouse. Rancho Cotati jumped out to a 20-0 lead, but then Pleasant Valley came back. I think this was on Pleasant Valley's homecoming night as well. But Pleasant Valley came back and had a pick six, which put them in the lead 21-20. But then Rancho kind of took the lead back in the fourth and then sealed it with my man, Big Malik Cleveland. Another game-winning fumble recovery. He had one last year against Van Enden. Well, guess what? He did it again. This time it was for a touchdown. He almost was down before he reached that ball across the pylon. We saw the tape, but man, what a big play from him. And Rancho, I think we'll touch on the game of the week later on in the episode. But man, Rancho really pulled one out, and that's a pretty big win. On the way on. What do you say?
Yeah, I'm sure Gehrig is not too happy about squandering a 20-0 lead. I'm sure he was looking at that, being like, "Hey, a few more scores here, boys, and we get a running clock, and we get out of Chico here early." But yeah, I mean, maybe kind of letting their foot off the gas there a bit, and then a pick six in the third, got actually put them behind, and Potu Hale got that score in the fourth to get the lead back, and then you're right, that the video of the Malik Cleveland fumble, it's like
I love
to see a big man move like that. He's like Superman airborne, like on the ground with the ball stretching over the over the goal line. Impressive play for him. And I mean, obviously too, I think even if he hadn't scored that, I still think they would have won the game. But great highlight tape for him though, for sure. So yeah, I mean, Rancho 4-1. Again, they lost to Vanden, by like, was it 1 point, 2 points? I forgot.
Yep.
1 point, yeah. So I mean, shoot, again, they're 1 point away from being 5-0 and having this really, really, really impressive resume. So still the team to beat in the area as far as we're concerned. But man, these next couple weeks, we were kind of looking ahead as far as some of our game of the week prep for this next month, and holy cow, we have some good ones coming up. I think for something like 3 straight weeks, it's something like Rancho's playing something like Annalee. I want to say it goes Annalee, Windsor, and then Newman, I want to say, in 3 straight weeks for Rancho. So hold on to your hats, folks. It's gonna start getting crazy here in the
strap in your seatbelts.
Buckle up, folks. So yeah, great win for Rancho, but I think that's about all we needed to touch on there. And then yeah, Ukiah Casa Grande. Ukiah won 27-20. Funny thing though, we have very little details about this game. We did not get a write-up from this one. It was not in our roundup, so we're kind of just going off of some of the stats that Casa Grande had posted from the game. But yeah, kind of a surprising result here. I think both of us had picked Casa in this one to win. Casa was coming off of that really tough loss to Vintage. Kind of thought that they were in line for a good bounce back spot. And then they welcomed Ukiah, who, they'd come in winners of 2 straight. But yeah, Costa just comes in and stuns the Gauchos. So yeah, again, don't have a lot of details about this one, but kind of looking at some of the stats and some of the results. I mean, Casa ran the ball way more than we're used to seeing them run. I mean, it looked like Ryder Jacobson had 20 carries, which I'm sure is his season high. Yeah, Wyatt Abramson was 24 for 36 with a pick. Looks like 2 touchdowns as well. But yeah, I don't really quite. I mean, again, we don't really know what really happened in this game. Actually, now that we're talking about it too, I think it was the featured game on YSN 365. So I guess we could have gone back and watched the tape there, but no, but it's just kind of looking at big picture things here. It's, Ukiah is now 3-2. They're heading into NBL Redwood play again against Maria Carrillo this week. Big game as far as the, who's kind of going to be that second tier team to St. Vincent going to be, it looks like. And then Casa's kind of scuffling a little bit now. They're now 2-3. After that big win over Montgomery, which turns out now how huge that was. I mean, you don't win that game and you're 1-4, with 4 straight losses kind of here as you go into the heart of league play. That's a really tough place to be. So that win over Montgomery turns out to be huge. But yeah, it just seems like Casa has to figure some stuff out here. I mean, I believe they play Sonoma Valley this week, which, yeah, I mean, hopefully they can kind of get some stuff right in this one. And then, yeah, I think going forward, I don't know what the rest of their schedule is. I think they still have to play Petaluma, and they still have to play American Canyon. So 2 more tough games there. But I also think, again, with Petaluma's win over AmCam or over Vintage this week, again, Viva is kind of an open race this year. So I think Casa has the talent. They have some pretty good coaching too. So I think that, as far as big picture things, I think Casa will be fine. But this is kind of a, one of those kind of see what you're made of kind of stretches right here. So can Casa bounce back? And, if they can't, I think their season could be over kind of quickly here. But, I'm not counting the gotchas out yet. I saw them beat Monty. They have a lot of talent. They have great defense. They have some really good skill players. So I think they'll be fine. But yeah, it's just a tough stretch for them so far.
Yeah, no doubt. Casa, just looking ahead, Casa after they host Sonoma Valley this week, then they stay at home for Napa, then they go away to American Canyon, home versus Petaluma, and then to close out their season, they go away to Justin Siena. But you know what? I think that one thing about this Ukiah team is they have no problem traveling all the way down from Ukiah, because I mean they travel down to Santa Rosa, beat Santa Rosa obviously in a close one. What came down all the way to Petaluma obviously beat. So the travel doesn't really affect them. Obviously, they're hosting Maria Carrillo this week, like you said, a big one. So we'll see if the long trip up affects Maria Carrillo at all. But yeah, I mean, good win for the Wildcats. I mean, they are a very confident group. They have a bunch of athletes on their squad. Very, very confident kids. I feel like Johnny Silvera is kind of coming to his own now. Definitely knocked off the rust a little bit. So we'll see if they keep that going in tough NBL Redwood play. But Gus, I just want to I kind of want to touch on the game of the week, but before that, or this past game of the week. But before that, obviously, some interesting story out of Skyline. Obviously, they had to cancel, or they had to forfeit their game against Windsor. That goes in as a win on Windsor's schedule. But Gus, you kind of had the details. You did a story on it. Kind of what did you hear from the Windsor camp?
Yeah, it was a little I don't know, it was just an unfortunate situation over there at Skyline high school over in Oakland. Supposed to be Windsor's final non-league game of the year or of the season. But I guess Skyline, I know Oakland's been dealing with some violence over the last couple of weeks, and I guess some of it kind of spilled over into Skyline, and there was a fight. I guess some players were involved. I guess, I talked to Dean Sexton, who's the head coach for Windsor, and he said, I guess, one of their players might have even been in the hospital. But it definitely involved a few players. So hopefully everyone's okay over there. But yeah, Skyline's coach was still gung-ho to play, or, I guess he still wanted to play. He still had the players to play. Maybe it might have been a good distraction for them to kind of actually, get on the field and kind of get away from what was going on, at school. But the administration kind of, looked at it as being like, this is not a good idea. So Skyline's admin kind of came over the top and said, nope, no game. Sorry, just not in the right place, not the right time to do it. So Skyline forfeited officially, and Windsor picked up. So this is now 2 straight buys for Windsor because they were off officially last week, and now this is kind of a weird unofficial buy. So we've already had a couple of these now, where some of our schools here have had some unofficial buys, like some just sudden ones here. So kind of strange, but a bummer that, again, neither of these teams will be able to kind of get a full schedule in. And again, hopefully everyone is okay and the situation is better over there at Skyline. But I saw some follow-up reporting from the Mercury News and not a lot of details out there, but it sounds like Skyline is coming back and playing this week. So glad to see things are kind of getting better over there. But yeah, unfortunate for both sides. Windsor heads into MBO Oak play next week. 2 straight buys. So we'll see how that goes. Some rust versus rest situation going on over there. So anyway, moving on from that one. I guess last game we'll kind of touch on here is the game that I was at. Our game of the week. Can we keep picking some great ones for games of the week, whatever the plural is for that. Game of the weeks. Double overtime, Cloverdale 35, Willits 29. It was funny because I was also looking at a bunch of the other scores from around the area. I mean, again, Petaluma, I was like, holy cow. Ray Cray, I was like, holy cow. Rancho was coming back, I was like, holy cow. And then I'm like, oh wait, this game here is freaking amazing too. Like I need to like this is awesome. Like there was so much going on that it was hard to almost like kind of take in what I was seeing. But Cloverdale, it was 14-14 at the half. Willits was kind of coming in too as this sudden, or not sudden, but like they're looking like the team to beat this year, or one of the teams to beat in the North Central League One. Some small school action over there in Lake County, Lake County, Mendocino. I mean, they had knocked off St. Helena the week before. They were 4-0. Cal Preps had them as the number 2 team in Division 7 in the NCS behind St. Vincent. So by all accounts, it was like, this is kind of Willits' year. Cloverdale was like, sorry, this is going to be our game. So really, really like crazy game. It was tied. It was just funny. I was there, and now I'm trying to like remember everything that just happened. It was tied late. Willits had the ball back. They were driving. It was they actually they ran the ball very heavily. They hardly ever passed the ball at all. And then I think on the longest pass of the night was a 36-yarder that got them down to within Cloverdale's 8-yard line with like 30 seconds left, and all they needed was a field goal, a touchdown, and they would have won the game. This is still in regulation, by the way. First down, first play after the long gain. They fumble the ball. They get it back, but they lose like 10 yards. The next, they call a quick timeout. I think there's something like 8 or 15 seconds left, maybe. They then take a sack. Like Cloverdale's defense just swarmed them, took a sack. They sprinted back up to the line, tried to get a spike off. But the Willits quarterback accidentally took a knee instead of spiking the ball, which I felt bad for the kid. And even after the game, Willits quarterback or Willits head coach Brendan Norbury, he's like, that is not his fault. That is our fault. We should have coached that up better. We're not in that situation a lot. We don't work on that situation a lot. That is not on him. That's completely on us. So, just to, like Cloverdale just got lucky. I'll just say that. I mean, again, you're down to the 8, give them some credit, for getting the stop there too. But, again, kid just makes a different decision, and, that could have turned out completely different, but, took a knee, instead of spiking. Clock runs out. We go to overtime. Overtime rules. Each team gets 3 possessions. This is also the first overtime game that I've covered since covering high school sports too. So I had to like refresh the rules with the official there, but each team gets 3 possessions. After the first 2, if the score is still tied, the third possession, the teams have to go for 2. And if the score is still tied after that, then the game ends in a tie. So we actually could have had a tie. First possession, Willits has the ball. They drive down, they score, they get the 2-point conversion, and they even converted a long 3rd down too, which got them, which kept the drive alive. Take a 29-21 lead. Cloverdale comes back. they get a huge penalty from Willits on 4th down and 5, brings them down to the 2. Freshman quarterback Mason Cattarelli, who, watch out for this kid. I had him down for over 200 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns. Scores one of his touchdowns from 2 yards out on 4th down. And then he also converts the 2-point conversion. So a huge, I mean, again, monster game from this kid. This is a guy who took over, I believe, in the Pinery game where they came back and rallied and won. And they've just been rolling ever since with him. So definitely a guy to watch over there for Cloverdale. But yeah, huge game for him. Coming back down, Willits, whose field goal kicker had, like, every PAT would have been good from like 40 yards out. They get down to the 7. They decide to kick a field goal. I think they have like 4th and goal or something like that. They decide to kick to the 9. They decide to kick a field goal, 26 yarder, I think it was, and he misses it wide right. And again, this is a guy who I think he made. I think in the McKinleyville win that they had, they beat McKinleyville 3-0. He made like a 45 yarder to win the game, and so he missed a 26 yarder. Cloverdale, all they have to do is score a field goal and they win the game. And they come down, and Cattarelli, 3rd play of the drive, gets a 17-yard rushing touchdown and walk-off win. So I don't know. I mean, if that's not high drama, I don't know what is. Just an insane win for them. One of these wins too, I think, again, like listening to Cloverdale head coach Taylor Galloway talk to them after the game, he was saying, like, this is a win that you guys will always remember. And like, I can only imagine, again, if I was a 14, 15-year-old and winning a game in that fashion against one of the best teams in the area. Oh my God, that I would tell my kids about that forever. So, huge win for Cloverdale. But they've I mean, again, for beating a Willits team that for again, looks like one of the best teams in the NCL one. Cloverdale still has to play St. Helena, which they're doing next week, and they still have to play Clear Lake, which is also undefeated. So by no means is the NCL one race over, but Cloverdale, I think, has entered the fray as far as a contender. I expect St. Helena to also still be there, and I expect Clear Lake to also still be there, and Willits. So kind of same thing as the VVAL. So we have 4 teams with a pretty legit shot at taking the crown over there. So, yeah, it was fun to cover some small school action, and it's never a dull moment over there in the NCL one. So, great game over there, and yeah, it was fun to get out and check out some of the small schools in the area.
Yeah, no doubt. Could you imagine? Could you imagine what a tie would have done for the NCL one circus if they ended up tying?
I know. And I was joking about that with some of the Cloverdale coaches too. I'm like, because when I heard, I'm like, oh wait, games can end in ties, and he's like, yeah, and I'm like, that just sounds like a nightmare. He's like, yeah,
that would just throw a wrench into everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, we I obviously don't want to say anything too early, but we definitely have some game of the year contenders here, and this one could be up there. But let's get ahead and looking ahead to this next week here. We're going to do our rankings right now, and we had a lot of discussion on these rankings. Obviously, some teams stayed in the same spot, but Gus and I literally almost went toe to toe on this because there was with all the results that happened this past weekend, some teams really made their case super strong. So Rancho stays at the 1 spot, Cardinal Newman stays at 2, Windsor stays at 3, St. Vincent stays at 4, Petaluma moves up to 5. On the bubble, we have Annalee, Montgomery, Casa Grande, Maria Carrillo, and Gus. We had a long discussion as to whether or not we jump Petaluma from the bubble all the way to number 4 and drop St. Vincent down to 5. Because honestly, both of their bodies of work are pretty comparable. But in the end, we kind of stuck with St. Vincent at 4 and Petaluma, and we moved Petaluma to that 5 spot. So the Trojans making their first appearance in our top 5 rankings.
Yeah, this was like Ken said, we had some lengthy discussions about how much does the vintage win help Petaluma, trying to compare that to St. Vincent's win over Montgomery, comparing St. Vincent's, whole schedule, whole resume to Petaluma's, strength of schedule, all those different things. And St. Vincent was also on bye last week too, so they were resting up for league play coming up this week. But yeah, I mean, a lot of discussion, and I think it really could have gone either way. But yeah, I mean, like Kenan mentioned too, it's like just looking at St. Vincent's kind of entire body of work and kind of who they've beaten, and They've kind of been challenged in almost every game this year, or they've had some pretty challenging opponents. And Petaluma has also played some pretty good teams, this year too, but also maybe a couple cupcake games in there as well. Like it's, we'll be honest as far as that goes. But yeah, I mean, again, a lot of discussion, but I think that, yeah, looking at St. Vincent's kind of whole, big picture wise, I think St. Vincent is still kind of still deserves to be at number 4. And I think last week we had even said, like, clear cut number 4 team, and it was definitely true last week. And again, we're keeping them at 4 this week. But yeah, Petaluma is like St. Vincent did last week for being in the top 3. Petaluma is making a good case for being in the top 4 this week. So
everyone's making
everyone has cases.
Everyone's got a good case. But I will say this, and this is probably the one thing Gus and I agreed on this week, that with NBL play beginning this week, folks, things are going to get a lot more interesting. Yep. Just because obviously in the next couple of weeks we have our top 3 teams all playing each other in the matter of 3 straight weeks too. So things are definitely going to get interesting around here, to say the least. All right, let's move on to our game of the week this week. NBL Oak opener. Annalee will travel to Rancho. I will be at that game. Obviously, Rancho kind of returns home. They traveled to Vanden, had a bye, and then they traveled all the way to Chico, played Pleasant Valley this past week. So it'll be nice for the Cougars to return home. Annalee obviously coming off that tough loss to Marie Creo. So this will be an interesting game to see how they respond, especially with all that secondary talent that Rancho Cotati possesses, and Ice Walkers, Saiba Jwale, obviously Jacob Pruitt. So tough test for Annalee this week, Gus. No doubt about it. We'll see how things stack up, but obviously this could be a good telltale as to where Annalee stacks up against those top 3 teams.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you kind of said, I think this should be a really interesting matchup. I mean, 2 very high-powered offenses here. I think even after last week, I think Annalee still might be the highest scoring offense, I want to say, in the entire county around here. And like you mentioned too, I mean, you're dealing with a Cal commit in Saiba Jwale on the outside, matching up with your top wide receiver, and then same thing, an Ias Walker, who's a 3-star, a 3-star defensive back with some other D1 offers as well. So. Yeah, I mean, I think this matchup plays well into Rancho's hands, but I don't think you can ever count Annalee out, especially again, with some of the weapons that they have, and with Sammy Long, who one of the best passers in the North Coast section. So I don't know I guess Rancho has seen some quarterbacks like this already before. I mean, Brady Weingart over at Redwood is pretty talented, and then same thing with Trey Dimes over at Vanden. So, and they kind of kept them in check pretty well. So we'll see how Annalee and the Annalee and Sammy Long can kind of figure things out with Rancho. But yeah, I mean, this is what NBL play is all about. I mean, again, we're probably going to see some teams like Annalee or Montgomery, maybe even Rancho, or maybe even like Windsor or Newman with maybe a loss or 2 as well. So I think things are, like you said earlier with the rankings, things could get pretty crazy here come league play. So yeah, should be a good one there. And again, it starts to stretch of some game of the weeks here that we have coming up with Rancho, Windsor, and Newman are going to kind of be featured teams here for the next couple of weeks. And I think that's kind of how it should be. I mean, again, these are the top teams in the area, and they're all going to be playing each other here over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, stay tuned. We're gonna have some good ones coming up. The other game that we'll be at this week, I'll be heading out to Colonel Newman to check out their NBL Oak opener against Montgomery. Montgomery, we're gonna kind of see if they have what it takes to kind of bounce back from a couple losses, and they were off on a bye last week. I know Vertus Patton, their head coach, does not like byes, so coming off of their official bye,
it, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe. But coming off, I mean, they were pretty banged up after that St. Vincent loss. So hopefully they kind of got right. But yeah, I mean, they had an unofficial bye a few weeks ago, and St. Bernard's had to cancel, and then this is their official bye. So yeah, I mean, they lost to Casa, and then they lost to St. Vincent, and then they had another bye. So we'll see if they can go bye loss, bye, and then going into Newman. Again, I know Patton's probably looking at this just being like, oh my God, like maybe not the setup that he wanted heading into this kind of game, but I mean, again, we had also talked about too after the Casa and the St. Vincent games of like these are kind of wake up call games. Like if these aren't, then what is? So I think that they'll come back with a better effort this week. And I do think that I know Newman will definitely be favored by a few touchdowns probably in that one, but I think it will be closer than I think the predictions will probably have it. So and then for Newman, kind of some emotional kind of an emotional week this week too. About 5 years ago, I think October 9th was the start in 2017 was the Tubbs fire, which burned down actually most of their school, and yeah, caused a lot of hardship and heartache over there at Newman, at least for for that year especially. But I mean, they had to play games at different locations, and a bunch of the I think a bunch of kids like lost houses, and a bunch of yeah. I mean, again, it's not often your school burns down, but and then to kind of come back from that and do that. So I know again a different coaching staff. None of these players were there when that happened, but still for the school it'll probably be a pretty a point that they're going to want to commemorate and remember. So yeah, we'll kind of see, but kind of some two good NBL Elk games coming up this week. So Keenan, with that, do you want to head into our predictions for week 7 games?
Let's do it. So records last week, Gus, you were 5-4. Obviously, a lot of things screwed up on you here, and I was 7-2. The first time I have a better record than Gus, so I'm going to take that to the bank and live it up
you got
till
2
at
games
least
on
this.
me last week too.
Yeah, I know. So overall, Gus, you're 49-24. I am 44-29. So catching up a little bit, but obviously you still have the advantage. Just looking at last week's slate, obviously, Cloverdale kind of screwed you over a little bit. Vintage screwed you over, um, big, big time. Everything else was kind of good. By the way, one little tidbit we forgot to mention: Rosa University Prep getting on the win column in a pretty convincing win against John Sweat. Good for the Knights over there in 8-man football. But yeah, let's get into our predictions here. Obviously, our game of the week, starting out with our game of the week, Annalee at Rancho Cotati. Key, I think, here is going to be Annalee's defense. Obviously, they have given up a good number of points. We saw that 50-49 win of Petaluma as a prime example of that. But so if Annalee's defense is going to give up a lot of points, the school you don't want to give them to is Rancho Cotati, who can put up a lot of points. So we're going both with Rancho Cotati here, Gus.
Yeah, I think just Rancho Cotati's high-powered offense mixed with Annalee. You're right; their defense has kind of been one of their tough points this year. And then again, just kind of looking at how Rancho matchups with them on the outside. I think it'll be I don't know. I'm expecting a shootout, but I also think Rancho will just be putting up a bunch of points this game. So Rancho in this one.
Yep. Montgomery at Cardinal Newman. Obviously, Cardinal Newman has had an interesting season. Early on, they lost Santino Acevedo to injury. The last game they played was against St. Mary's of Stockton, who they ended up losing to 32-18. But honestly, if they didn't have so many turnovers in the first quarter, they could have honestly won that game. So obviously, they're coming off a bye, so this could be a big bounce back game for Newman, especially Gus with the emotional aspect you talked about as well. We're both going with Cardinal Newman here.
Yeah, I have a text out to Richard Sanchez, the Newman's head coach right now. Oh, I should have mentioned too at the top. It is October 4th at about noon that we're recording this. So I have not heard back from him yet about the status of Santino for this week's game, but he has missed, I want to say, what is it, the last three games, I want to say.
Yep.
So some and some ankle injury or something. So hopefully he's had enough time to get that right. So I'm not sure if we'll see him this week, but I think either way, Newman's defense really, really strong. It's definitely been their strong point. And again, winning without Santino these last few weeks is, or I guess, and even playing tough against St. Mary's shows that again they have guys who can step up. So yeah, I don't think I'm sure that the prediction will be, or that the Cal Preps prediction will be Newman by a few touchdowns, but I think it'll probably be a bit closer than that, especially with Montgomery probably hungry to bounce back and get a statement win after last week. But I'm still going with Newman in this one. So
Yep. Both going with Newman here. Obviously, Windsor with their kind of weird stretch of games they've had with some unfortunate circumstances. They traveled to Santa Rosa for the NBL opener. Um, Santa Rosa's scrappy. They could make it a game for a little bit, but obviously Windsor's offense is just as high powered as anybody's in the area. So we're both going with Windsor here, Gus.
Yeah, this could be a tough stretch coming up for Santa Rosa. Does not get easier. Kind of Oak plays. This is going to be the toughest probably stretch of their entire season, and they open with Windsor. So hopefully they put up a fight, but I think Windsor by a few scores in this one.
All right, moving on to the Redwood. We got Maria Carrillo at Ukiah. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but this is a very interesting game for league standing purposes early on. This could be a deciding factor for the NBL Redwood Championship. Whoever knows. But this is the only game we're split on this week. Gus, you're going with Maria Carrillo. I'm going with Ukiah. I think Ukiah takes that momentum into home, and I think they kind of find a way to win past Maria Carrillo. But obviously, Maria Carrillo is no slouch, Gus, and you have the Pumas.
Yeah, we were talking about this too, of like looking at who like kind of the whole carousel here of like so and so beats who, or so and so beats this team, and then this team beats that team, and then this team beats that team, but they lost to this team.
Yeah.
It's kind of exactly how this cycle's gone. But Ukiah got shut out by Montgomery 27-0. And then Ukiah then also beats Casa Grande, but then Casa Grande beats Montgomery. And then where was I going with this? Anyway, so it's just all these teams are like beating everybody and like then losing to the other team. So I think that these two teams are probably very, very evenly matched. Again, despite the records, Carrillo 2-3, Ukiah 3-2. But I think both teams are coming in with huge waves of momentum right now. I mean, again, Carrillo 2-3, coming off their biggest win of the year against Annalee, probably their best performance of the year. And then Ukiah, 3 straight wins, coming off their biggest win over Casa Grande. So pick them. I don't feel super strongly either way, but again, you know me, I'm pretty high on Carrillo this year, and yeah, I just think that they have the guys to do this. So I don't think it'll be. I mean, again, playing at Ukiah, never easy. And again, Ukiah's a tough team, but I think that Carrillo just has the edge in this one. I don't know, just kind of feel it, but I just have a feeling about Carrillo going forward the rest of the way that I think they'll kind of be that second team in the Redwoods. So we'll see if I'm right.
Yep. We will see. It's going to be an interesting one. St. Vincent at Piner. This is kind of a lot. I think a lot more interesting than people think it's going to be. Obviously, if Piner's offense shows up and does what they do, it could be a lot closer game than people think. But I mean, St. Vincent, obviously, they've just been on a roll. Their momentum is insane. Obviously, this is at Piner, but St. Vincent is, I mean, they've proved they're the real deal this year, Gus, and we don't see that changing against Piner. We're both going with the Mustangs.
Yep, and no offense to Piner, but I don't think this one's going to be as close as you might think it is. I don't know. I think St. Vincent's just been kind of rolling of late, and again, I think their win over Montgomery last week shows that again they're one of the kind of upper echelon teams over here in the area. So yeah, I don't think they're going to be slowed down much by Piner. So St. Vincent.
Yep, no doubt. All right, Sonoma Valley, they will travel to Petaluma to face Casa Grande. Obviously, Casa Grande is looking to bounce back, like we kind of talked about earlier. Sonoma Valley, after starting the season 3-1, have dropped their opening 2 VVAL games, and you know they kind of continue their tough stretch of VVAL games here. They travel to Casa, so we're going with Casa Grande.
Yeah, I don't think this schedule doesn't get much easier here for Sonoma Valley. Yeah, Casa Grande, I think gets a good bounce back game here going forward, which they need. So I think that they're going to come out motivated, especially after last 2 weeks. So yeah, Casa in this one.
All right, big one again for NCL1 play. Back-to-back weeks for Cloverdale. Big games, back-to-back weeks. Cloverdale at St. Helena. Obviously, Cloverdale, who beat Willits, ended up beating St. Helena. So again, there's that circus.
Yeah.
We'll see how this one plays out. But Gus, we're both going with the Eagles here. What do you got to say about this one?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think this one could go either way as well. I was just again very impressed with what I saw from Cloverdale last week. Yeah, I mean Mason Cattarelli is the real deal. They have another great back in IL Fitchelberg, another senior back who I think had some like 90 something yards. And Willits is a very big, very physical team. And from what I've seen, I think St. Helena is. I mean, again, I think that they've been good this year. But yeah, I mean, losing last week or 2 weeks ago to Willits by a few scores, and I guess that one could have been closer than the final score seemed, or than the final score made it appear. But yeah, I mean, Cloverdale again is again coming off of a very high emotional win. We'll see if they can kind of avoid a letdown spot here, because I guess I could also kind of see them going into St. Helena, coming off of again that huge win over Willits, and then maybe not coming out with the same energy and fire that that they had last week. But hopefully I'm wrong. But I think it will be a great battle. Again, Cattle has just been pretty dynamic for them. And yeah, I don't really quite know what to make of St. Helena yet. I mean, again, after they beat Justin Siena pretty handily to open the season, and, they've kind of they've been good, but then again, that loss to Wills back down to earth. You come off of an emotionally high win like Cloverdale is, and then St. Helena is coming off of, I think they actually won pretty handily last week too. But again, losing to Willits and then kind of seeing this game as like a big kind of league standing game. So I think it could be close, but again, just having seen Cloverdale last week, I think that they're very, very good, and I think that they're riding high right now. So Eagles fly in this one.
Yep. All right, our lone Saturday game, obviously another 8-man football action. Roseland University Prep at Emory. Obviously, Roseland coming off their dominant 40-0 win last week against John Sweat. Emory is from Emeryville, and really don't have anything on them. Nothing updated on Max Preps. It actually says on Max Preps that this is their first game of the season.
Yeah.
So in that case, we're both going with the Knights to take this one, and get on a little winning streak here.
8-man football being 8-man football. I'm not surprised that a team is starting their season on October 8th, but yeah, I mean, literally nothing to go off of about Emory, but I think Rosen again coming off of a good win against John Sweat. I don't even know if Emory has had like a team in the past, but it looks like they have, but I don't know. I guess they don't. I don't think they have actually. Looking back at a couple of their last years. So.
Guys, when we say there's nothing, there's literally nothing.
There is absolutely nothing on this team. So their last actual season they had a team was 2016, 2017, and they went 0-8, and then 2-8, 4-6, 7-4, 4-5. So I don't know. Yeah, we should litigate this one probably too much, but yeah, Rosen Pratt goes to 2-4 in this one. So
Rosen. Yep. So there you go. Those are our predictions. Gus, to round things out, we got an interesting story here. You saw something at Cloverdale. Someone kind of popped their head out and made a little appearance. Apparently, he's been making an appearance all season. But who'd you see up there, Gus?
Yeah, so funny note, I had heard some rumbles about this, but Paul Cronin, who's obviously the former Cardinal Newman Windsor head coach from last year, I've heard that he's been helping out kind of with some programs around the area. I heard he helped out at Montgomery, or was helping out with Montgomery, but with their offense. I guess a few months ago, a couple weeks ago, I don't know what the timeline was, but I also heard that he was helping out over at Cloverdale with their staff. And lo and behold, who did I see walking up on Friday night? But Paul Cronin wearing flip-flops of all things. I don't think I've ever seen Paul Cronin wearing sandals before, so that was a new thing for me. But yeah, it was good to see him. Yeah, he's been helping out with the Eagles offense this year, and it shows. I mean, they're very dynamic offense this year. So yeah, I don't know if he's like OC or if he's just kind of an assistant guy over there, kind of helping out, but. Yeah, I mean, they have a great coaching staff over there too. I mean, Taylor Galloway, who has some time, I believe was like at El Molino, and I think at St. Vincent. He's also the nephew of former St. Vincent head coach Gary Galloway, and then I think Randy Parmeter too, who was also a head coach over at El Molino for a while. So they have some kind of relatively big names over there, which is kind of funny. But yeah, it's just not. I mean, again, I think I had known that Paul was over at Cloverdale helping for a bit, but yeah, it was just kind of confirmed with with my own eyes. So I don't know what his plans are. We didn't really talk a lot of big picture stuff. I know he was kind of focusing on the game, but yeah, if anyone was wondering where Paul Cronin was all this time, it's over at Cloverdale right now. So
Yep, no doubt. All right, well that wraps it up for our football coverage. Obviously we have some other things going on in some other sports. Gus, you're going to a huge NBL Redwood matchup in volleyball tonight. Rancho
Mhm.
is hosting Ukiah. That should be a pretty big one. And then we have some other key matchups coming up in the next couple weeks for as far as volleyball standards are. In terms of programming notes, I don't think there's any on my end. Obviously, we're both going to be uh, field side at games this week. So it'll be back to kind of normal coverage. Gus, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, again, next couple weeks we're things are going to be kind of cranking up with Oak play kind of kicking up into high gear. Keenan, I know for your 100-yard walk this week, you're going out to Annalee,
Correct.
doing it with running back Jaden Brady today. And then nothing else at the moment to report. I don't think so. But yeah, I mean, again, to everyone who's been watching and listening, we've been getting some good feedback from the pod. Again, I'm hoping that we can get some guests on at some point. It's just kind of hard to organize with our schedules because Tuesday is the first day of our work week, and then we have to kind of organize it over the weekend. And anyway, it's just kind of complicated on our end, but we do kind of want to we do want to start getting some guests on. And I think we will at some point. We just kind of have to figure out the logistics of that. I mean, again, we're still also a 2-person sports staff here. If Keenan has also become our podcast and video editor too. So on top of, again, writing and reporting and doing the newsletter, I mean, Keenan's kind of one of these guys behind the strings, or behind the scenes, like doing all these things that, people don't often see. But the reason we have such great, again, podcasting work and the videos turn out so well is all because of Keenan. So hats off to you, my guy. But yeah, so again, we're still juggling a lot here. So hopefully at some point we can get some guests on. But yeah, TBD. It's been a little harder to figure out than we kind of imagined. But
Oh yeah, one more thing came up on my mind. Last week, guys, we touched on that
oh
big
yeah,
meeting to discuss the league changes in football. Gus, I guess we got that date wrong. Do you want to update
I
people?
was super off on the date. I was really off on the date. It was actually October 19th is when that meeting
Okay.
is. So we have a couple weeks here. Nothing is going to be happening this week. I was mistaken. I should have had the date up in front of me, but my bad. So if you're wondering where that update was, I guess you'd had to watch all the way here to the end of the pod to find that out. But yeah, but again, stay tuned for some updates from that. That was, yeah, I mean, again, that if and when it does pass, it's going to be very substantial to, again, the landscape of things. And again, if you aren't familiar, there we've written about it a bit, but yeah, there's potentially the 27 teams throughout the MBL, VVAL, MCAL, which are the 3 kind of North Bay leagues that comprise the Redwood Empire Conference, are all considering doing a massive realignment just in football, or basically all, like, those 3 leagues are going to kind of, all of those teams are kind of combined into the same league, and then they get broken up into 4 different, I guess, divisions or leagues, if you want to call them, based on talent or competitive equity. So a top team could be, or the top league could be like Rancho Cotati, Windsor, Cardinal Newman, Vintage, San Marin, some combination, or Marin Catholic, some combination of that. So yeah, and also too, I've heard some people talking about, like, oh, this could happen next year. No, if and when this does pass, and I think at this point it's a pretty sure thing it's going to pass. It's just, what is the format it's going to look like? Are teams going to be able to go up and down divisions every year, or is it every 2 years? A lot of those things haven't been worked out yet, and that's kind of what these last discussions are going to be about. So October 19th is this massive kind of final vote from the conference, and then they're going to decide, they're going to vote, I guess, on these 3 proposals that, again, I've written about a little bit. They're going to kind of decide which ones they like best. They're going to send them off to the North Coast section. North Coast section is going to have final review of it, and then probably approve it unless something crazy happens. At this point, I think we're pretty far along in the process where this is a pretty done deal at this point. It's just a matter of kind of crossing your T's, dotting your I's. But yeah, by 2024, we're probably going to be looking at a pretty massive change in our high school football scene around here. So
It's gonna be crazy, man.
it's going to be crazy, man. Stay tuned. You're going to be covering all your Marin schools again, dude.
Hey, man.
Can't get away. Can't get away.
Yeah, I know. All right, well, that'll do it for us. We appreciate you guys watching, listening, and giving us feedback. And we're already this deep into the football season, and it's continuing to get crazier. So we're pretty excited on our end. We hope you guys are excited too as we begin NBL league play this week and continue NCL and VVAL play as well. So thank you guys for watching and listening. See you guys on the next episode.